I'm not sure what happened exactly with the bus. There was the bus that was waiting to leave. He said he'd be along, leaving in, 10 minutes or so. And then another bus driver walks up and says, "Do you want the 85?" And I said, "Yes." She said, "Well, I'm leaving now if you want to go." I'm like, "Okay, let's do that." So, yeah, I'm going home. Work was busy. I find it interesting. I feel like management is using me more efficiently where I can do things that the other people don't want to do. The other, team members don't want to do. And that I think I do, pretty well, at least. And so that was good. So I got to do that, and I got my lunch. I don't know what that was in my ear. I don't want to know. But it's a little weird with the FIFA thing. And that's saying a lot for somebody who's worked at Walmart for over 5 years and worked at Target for over 5 years and worked at the post office for 20 years. But, hang on. You know what we need? We need a cough drop. And I have my little stash of cough drops. Every time I get paid, I buy a couple bags of cough drops. So I have a variety pack. I want like the real cough drop, not that gentle stuff. I want a nice, harsh menthol Liptus flavor. Generally something with, like the regular classic menthol. Honey, lemon, and cherry is generally what I mix. This is a cherry, so. Anyways, cherry menthol, eucalyptus. So. I am waiting to use my HSA to get Sudafed because, one, they're very restrictive on the Sudafed, and the pharmacy tech at my Walmart, who is generally on the register, this has some kind of mental block when it comes to the HSA, and she can never process it correctly. I think it's the fact that it's the HSA and the Sudafed at the same time, because the Sudafed transaction is very lengthy process for them. And I get that methamphetamine is bad, but really, I remember, I had endometriosis in the early 2000s. I had a cyst on my ovary that was bleeding every time I had my cycle. It was very, very painful. I couldn't even sleep on my side, and it was so bad. I didn't even realize just how bad the pain was until I had my outpatient surgery to have it removed. There were some other things they did, but so they go in there and they take it out, and I wake up and I've got this stabbing pain in my abdomen where they made the incisions, because there were multiple incisions. There was this dermoid cyst on the other ovary, and they, quote, did a lot of cutting trying to get it out, but they couldn't find it, although on a later ultrasound a couple years later it was still there, so who knows. Anyway, I'm not too worried. It was only a couple millimeters, but so I wake up, I'm lying in this recovery chair, I've got an IV in my arm, and I've got the stabbing pain. And I think, oh, this is so much better. And then I just thought, what the expletive? They cut me open like a turkey on Thanksgiving Day? And that's a better pain than what I was living with for all these months? That was insane to me. once I recovered from the surgery, I was fine. Interestingly enough, the endometriosis, it resolved the endometriosis and the extremely painful periods I had. I always had very heavy ones though, so yeah, I don't miss that at all, man. Walking around anemic all the time, but I'm sorry, I got off track. So I remember going to the Kroger pharmacy and getting Vicodin because they had to push my surgery due to tropical storm Allison flooded the medical center downtown. And they were doing the urgent surgeries at the one facility, and they had to like bump like the less urgent ones like me. Hello. He was just sitting there, and I decided I wasn't going to react in my usual manner and get all paranoid and just, ignore him. But I didn't get near him either, and then he just finally decided to leave on his own. I don't know what the deal is, so I don't really care. I do know one day God is going to show me everything He protected me from, and it's just going to be astounding. I've had very, very few real problems in my life, and I've lived in some terrible places. So, I mean, I know what crack pipes look like laying on the ground, and dirty syringes, and baby diapers. They would just, the baby had a, soiled diaper. They would just take the diaper and just throw it in the gutter and put a new one on the baby and just, keep driving or whatever. And just filthy diapers everywhere and just, it's just, mixed in with the crack pipes and the syringes and condom wrappers, because there was at least one prostitute working the area, and just things like that. And I mean the actual condoms were all laying on the ground and just things like that. So yeah, pretty rough. So but this is nothing really. So I'm used to living in bad neighborhoods, but I remember I would go to the Kroger pharmacy and I would just say, "Hi, I got a prescription for Heather." And they say, "Oh, okay, yeah, here it is." And then just hand it over. And once I paid, and that was all they cared about was the money. But nowadays they got to do all this stuff. And I remember Ron was on Tramadol for his back. That's all they would give him. And because he was an alcoholic, and he was very, very open about being an alcoholic. And it is an ongoing source of astonishment to me that this man, for so long, was mixing pain pills and alcohol, Benadryl and alcohol, Tylenol and alcohol, which is a very bad combination. Did I mention the Benadryl? And melatonin and alcohol. Just anything really he could. And then when he developed the seizures, he was doing seizure pills and alcohol. He was doing blood pressure pills and alcohol. I thought for sure that I was going to find him, but he had been taking that for almost a year when he died. And they did a screen, and that wasn't it. It was heart disease that killed him. His arteries were just clogged up. And I read the report several times, and the alcohol was destroying his health as well. So they put that as the secondary. I think mainly because I was very honest with the investigator about his problem and how far it had gone. I think a lot of people say, "Oh, he has a beer now and then, a few a month or whatever." But I laid it all out there because I figured for a couple reasons. About a year and a half before Ron died, we had the house repiped. And Ron was already under a lot of stress because of trauma of, the pipe breaking in the house and the water cleanup, and he wanted to stay in the house, and it was a lot of pressure for him. We were having financial problems too, and he just basically lost his mind the day they were doing the pipes, and he had a psychotic break, and he was screaming that the plumber was cutting off his leg. And he was dead serious about it, and he was screaming, stop it, you're killing me. And there were two plumbers, the black guy and the white guy. The black guy walked off the job, and the white guy had to chase after him and do some real fast talking for about an hour before they would come back. And the only reason I think the guy came back was I called 911 and I explained what was going on with Ron, that Ron was just not in his right mind, and could somebody come out and do an evaluation. I'm thinking maybe they could just, keep him somewhere overnight. And two women came out and they had body cams, and they were extremely, extremely hostile to me from the get-go. And they decided this was just a domestic dispute, that we were arguing over the remodel. And they kept asking Ron, did he want the house repiped? I had pipes bursting left and right, and they had already taken half the plumbing out. So yes, we did. But they wouldn't let me, remind him of that. And Ron finally decided on his own that, yeah, he did want it done. And he went to go for his alcohol, the vodka, and they were shouting at him over that, and they came out and they shouted at me because he was drinking. And at this point in time, Ron was paying somebody to bring him alcohol, and he was getting in his wheelchair, going to the front door, unlocking the door, waiting at the front door, and his, quote, friend, unquote, would pull up, hand him the alcohol. Ron would hand the friend the money, and then Ron would take the alcohol back to his room. And I was told by a social worker during the investigation that my stalker initiated that Ron had to have full access to his money, and that I could not withhold it in any way, otherwise that would be cause for an investigation. So I had to give Ron the money he was making, which meant he could still buy his alcohol. And so they corner me in the hall, and they got these body cameras on either side on their chest pointing at me, and I'm sobbing, and I'm saying and trying to explain all this, and they were extremely, extremely hostile, very unsympathetic, and the house was just a ruin. The one plumber's out in the yard trying to talk the other guy into coming back, and I'm thinking, what am I going to do if I can't get these guys back? I knew I could get my money back, worst case, but the pipes had been cut out. Half of them had already been cut out. So I'm trying to explain to them, I'm doing my best, I just want you guys to have somebody take a look at him. So they got paramedics to come out. And they asked him a few questions, but Ron knew the year and the president, so they said he was fine, and they left. And these ladies cornered me in the hall again, and they said if anything happened to Ron, they were going to make sure I got prosecuted. And it was about the worst law enforcement experience you can imagine. And I get why my recipients hate the police. I really do. I do not hate the police. I love the police. I love law enforcement. I believe that Satan was using these two women like a puppet to torture me that day. And that's all it was, beginning and end. Hi, sweetheart. There is a little black cat over there. So, this was all running through my head when Ron died, and the investigator came, and I thought, well, if I'm going to go down, I'm going to go down for telling the truth. So I told them everything, and her everything, and I told the policeman everything, because the policeman came out to investigate also. And And basically, they're sitting there together, listening to me talk and making notes on their tablets and stuff. And I'm probably filming it too. I didn't think of that, but it didn't matter. I was telling them the truth. I didn't care. And it was actually very liberating. And I had just gone to Specs to get his monthly supply of alcohol because we couldn't afford for him to keep paying his friend $40 every week just to bring the alcohol. That's not counting the cost of the alcohol. So I just said, screw it, I'll just get it myself. And so I went, I got the cheapest bottom shelf rot gut crap you can imagine. And I'll bring it home and he would drink it. So, and I told him this. And I said, and this is what he drinks every month. And I went and I showed them the box full of the alcohol. Big 2-liter bottles of the vodka, and he had one of the spiced rum also. So, and I showed him all of it. I said, he does this one every month. He's doing this. And, when does he, when does he start drinking? I said, the minute he wakes up, he drinks in the middle of the night. He goes back to sleep. He's just drinking constantly. Drinking is a lifestyle for him. I didn't say it that way, but, that was the gist of it. And they're like, oh, okay. And they were just very subdued, both of them, I think. And they were just, I think, utterly shocked that I was so honest. But you know what? I don't lie. I really don't. I did something bad the other day. I accidentally took on my boss's radio. And I thought, well, the easy thing to do would just be, if they ask me, play stupid, no, I don't know where it is. I put it up where it was supposed to go. And then just sneak it back into the store and then put it somewhere where they'd find it. That would be the easy thing. But I thought, you know what, that if they catch me doing that, that's going to be real bad. It's going to ruin my witness and my credibility. So I texted her and I said, I'm sorry, I have your radio. I found it when I was cleaning out my vest. I'll bring it in tomorrow if you want, which is my day off. Or I can just, someone could come to the house and pick it up if you need it, or I can just bring it in on my next day. And they never got back to me. So I just brought it in today, and they said, oh, that's the other manager's radio. I'm like, okay, that's fine, But I was honest. And to me, it's very, very liberating to tell the truth in these kind of things, And that's why there was I was having a discussion with a bus driver one day about domestic abuse that Ron treated me very badly and how he treated me. And there was a guy on the bus. He said, you shouldn't talk about your husband like that. And I said, he's dead. He doesn't care. And that really shut him up. So, And I believe this lady she told me she had been in a situation like that. And she was having a hard time forgiving herself. And that was one thing I told Ron. I said, I am so angry. And I wasn't calling it abuse at the time. I said, I'm so angry about what you're doing to me. And he said, well, I said I was sorry. I said, I'm not just angry at you. I said, I'm angry at myself for letting you do this to me. And he didn't know what to say to that. So, I got something new today. There is a box on my porch. And my buddies got their goodies. Good. I left some cold drinks out for some workers today. Because it's just miserably hot and awful. Oh, okay, this is my whey protein. My hemp protein powder. Okay, and that is my box. And they even returned the ice pack. Very nice. But that's the nice thing about having inexpensive things like a cheapo milk crate and a $1 ice pack, is that if I hadn't got it back, it wouldn't have mattered. So, alrighty. So this, is the powder. That is hemp powder. I do like a hemp protein powder now and then. Not because it gets me high, but just because I think it's a nice change of pace and tasty. And there's just not a lot going on in the whey protein world for me, because I am allergic to chocolate and I'm allergic to nuts. And almost every whey protein powder out there has, hi, look at that. Look at that baby. Hi, sweetheart. Has both. And that's a problem. I can't do the chocolate caramel. I can't do the Snickers bar flavor. I can't do any of that. Although this didn't sound pretty good. And also, there's just a part of me that's thinking, if I'm trying to get into eating more real foods, is it really a good idea to be sucking down things that taste like candy bars that are full of processed flavors? Maybe it's better to just have something that's more natural. So, and I didn't have any issues with the shake I had today. It was a Orgain powder. It was all right. I put it in milk with a little bit of carrot juice, a little bit of yogurt, just for probiotics, and milk, and a little bit of frozen fruit. So, look at that baby. Look at that sweet kitten. There's my baby. Alrighty, that's it.